go.
Dropped out. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It's Monday, July 22nd, 2024. Welcome back from yet another weekend of complete craziness as it related to things that happen in the sports world, things that happen in your world, my world, not related to sports. I was clearly supposed to be in a St. Louis hotel room today, and we will get to why I'm not and what absolutely should petrify you as it petrifies me about why I'm not. But we start with President Joe Biden dropping out of the race. I don't think that I could have possibly expected Sunday to unravel the way it did, even though I had been saying since June 27th there was going to be an issue, and the avalanche had begun with just a pebble of a doubt from the debate June 27th that then turned into a few boulders that became a full avalanche that resulted in President Biden having no choice but to drop out of the race and no longer seek re-election. There is no way that it would have occurred to me that I would have found out from a text from Matt Coca in the same way that he communicates to me all through the week, every day since October of 2019, giving me information, saying, have you seen this? Start thinking about that. An NBA insider named Shams Charania, you know him. He gets into it with Woj. He had a very simple tweet that Biden was dropping out of without retweeting Joe Biden, without commenting on the fact that Biden had already announced it. I went on Twitter when Coco said it because I thought it was wrong, even though Sunday was the day we were told to wait for by sources in and around the president, that he would drop out, quote, as early as this weekend, likely Sunday. My mind was racing as I quickly read and then read again Joe Biden's release, President Joe Biden's tweet. I thought about the world we live in where that is the way it was communicated, was through X. And then I thought about how we got here, which has to go back not to Sunday, not to June 27th. It has to go back to when Biden first ran for president for this presidency and said he would be a transitional president. There were questions about his age and the age of both candidates when Biden beat Trump. So this is not new. The debate was simply the straw that broke the camel's back. That is going to be the narrative that you'll hear. I'd like to present you with a different narrative. The end of Joe Biden started well before the debate. The end of Joe Biden as a second-term president happened the day that he announced that he was going to seek re-election. The intent was to be the transitional president, was to lead the country and then leave the Democratic Party in a better place in order to have someone younger step in to take his place. The power of the presidency, whether it is the ego, whether it's the ability to effectuate change, whether it's simply being the president of the United States, it turned out that it was far too great an elixir for him to let go of. Unless, of course, it was far too great a power for Jill to let go of, his wife, or his family, or his advisors, or his staff. Because you see, when someone's the president of the United States, they're not the only one who has the power. The power of those in the inner circle, in the second circle, third circle, it's intoxicating. It's everlasting. But at the end, it's just a run. Being the president of the United States is not too dissimilar to what you do and what I do. If you work in a long-standing company If you run a sports team, you are doing it for a moment, and that team will live on long past you. Those who are president of the United States are taking care of our country for that period of time, 40 years, 8 years. We can sit and complain that issues stay the same, debates stay the same, the problems, it's the economy, it's Social Security, it's immigration, it's nuclear war. All of the different issues, incremental improvement, lack of improvement, but the existence never goes away. What struck me even more about Sunday was that Joe Biden chose with his advisors to let it be known to everybody that he was not quitting the race, that he would fight, almost taking from Trump the raised fist and the fight, which is becoming a mantra that has now leaked onto the baseball field. If you raise your fist and say fight, it doesn't necessarily mean you are pro-Trump. What it means is that you are pro a moment where when bad things happen, we persevere. There were very similar things that happened after 9/11. It's almost impossible how far Giuliani has fallen, because in the days following 9/11, Giuliani, Bush, heroes across the aisle, didn't matter. When a presidential candidate gets an attempt on his life and says, fight, fight, for baseball players, for athletes, for people in business, for anyone, regardless of political affiliation, you should take that as inspiration, not the actions after, where it's no longer nice discourse or unifying discourse, where it's back to the vitriol that causes division. But at that moment, Coke, I had scores of people asking me to talk about whether or not, as president of my baseball team, would I allow my players to do that fists up fight the way players are doing it now? And the answer is yes. If that's how they feel, that's how I feel for that moment. So Joe Biden fought, telling you that he was not going to turn down his bid. He's the only one who can beat Trump. The funniest part about it all, of course, is that he may be right. That whoever gets the nomination to be the Democratic candidate for president, whether it's Kamala Harris, which is clearly who is now being endorsed, though not with the original disclosure by Biden that he was not seeking re-election, the concerted and scripted statements that have come out since then. You've got Obama with the statement. You've got Clinton's with the statement. You will have, over the course of days, the statements that come out from anyone and everyone who was already aware of what was going to happen. The length of time between Biden's announcement Sunday and the release statement you have is not directly correlated to when you found out. You will read articles that no one knew, that only Biden's few people were aware. His staff, nobody had the understanding. Yes, there are certainly people in the housekeeping staff. There's certainly people at lower levels of every department in our government who likely did not know the second or the minute that Biden was going to drop out. That is extremely normal. The people who matter were very well aware in what was a completely coordinated effort to make sure they did it at a time, enough time before the convention, and with enough time in theory to challenge the Republican candidate for president come election day in November. Nothing changed in Biden's mind. His desire to be president for a second term, Joe Biden's desire for him to be president for a second term, it didn't go away on Sunday. What went away is the path to victory. What went away was any possible chance, and Joe Biden was told and finally agreed himself, along with his family, that his legacy was going to be tainted. And it turns out that we can all say we don't care about legacy, but we all do. We can all say it doesn't matter what people think about us, but we all do. We can all say that we ignore the writing on the wall that everyone sees but us, but we all do. No matter your level of narcissism, no matter your level of delusion, I will not ever subscribe to the belief that there are people who, when they are alone with their thoughts, looking in the mirror, both metaphorically and actually, do not realize what everybody else realizes. I am extremely concerned about what comes next, because if there are discussions about a black president, a black woman president, all of the, as Coca said before the show, talking about the politics of hate, we had a conversation about this, about how this becomes an indictment on different groups of people and how people are taking positions. When you process what has been happening, some say since June 27th, I say since he first announced his bid for re-election. When you process it, ask yourself, are you voting for a platform? Are you voting for a party? Are you voting for administration? Or are you voting for a person? Just use the information that you get, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in the newspaper. Try not to use it to confirm the bias you have. Try to use it to help you form a new thought about what matters to you. Because the story shouldn't be that Biden dropped out. That should not be the majority of what we're talking about today. The story should simply be, what is the government that you want? Do you want lots of government? Do you want a smaller government? Do you want power within the states, or do you want power at the federal level? Are there certain issues that you prefer at the federal level and certain issues that you're okay with being on the state level? Do you want big business? Do you want small business? Where are you on racial relations? Where are you on personal freedoms? So many different things you can ask yourself, but none of it should be about Biden dropping out. This is yet another step in the roller coaster ride that we will be on through November. We're not going to ignore sports and the business of sports, but when things happen in our country that need to be discussed, nothing personal is going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I appreciate that you tune in, and I appreciate that you give it all thought. I spent a lot of time thinking about St. Louis. Bags were packed. I was ready to go, leaving on a jet plane, until I got notified at 7:42 a.m. yesterday that Delta had canceled my plane. And thank you, Delta. I'm reaching out to say thank you for rebooking me on a Tuesday flight. Here's to you. I really did appreciate that. They had me landing at 9 a.m. Tuesday and then leaving again at 1 a.m. Tuesday. I'm not sure what they thought I'd be doing there for 4 hours, unless maybe an hourly hotel, but that's all I could think of. But of course, it's not a human being doing it. It's just a computer. The reason why flights were canceled, you may have read, you may have experienced what happened with Microsoft and CrowdStrike. Security company Microsoft, they did an update. I always do updates. Every time there's an update to my computer, my phone, iPad, anything, I do it immediately. Well, this update paralyzed the country. Airports, hospitals, banks. I heard during the course of the day, Friday, of people, family and friends, go home. There's nothing to do now. We can't function. Hospitals dispensing medicine via paper only as opposed to electronically. Banks trying to figure out what they're going to do. And this was not a cyber attack. This was a update bug. Could it have been a cyber attack? I didn't start thinking about it until I tried to figure out how to get to St. Louis, because there's a show to be done tonight in St. Louis. And here I am in our regular studio. having had to send an email to the ticket buyers and to the people that I simply could not get to St. Louis. There were no other planes with any seats in any class of service. Hard stop, stopping in one city, two cities. There was no way. I looked at Waze, could have gotten in the car for 15 hours and did not. Because, of course, it would then be 30 hours. Unless I rented a car and then it would have just been 15 hours. But what I spent time thinking about were cyber attacks, the industry that is security protection. When we first started with computers, we were worried about viruses that could somehow get into your computer, screw up your computer. There were movies that we'd watch, many from before you were born. War Games. Matthew Broderick broke into a computer to change his grades or the grades of Ali Sheedy from a C to an A. NORAD. Joshua. Barry Corbin had to take us to DEF CON 1 because of a hacker. When I would watch that movie, I was entertained. I loved it. It did not occur to me at all that it was any less fantasy than Alice in Wonderland. I watched Sneakers, which I've reviewed on this show with Robert Redford and Sidney Poitier, and River Phoenix, David Strathern, so many, Mary McDonnell, Dan Aykroyd. That's a movie about hackers. Ben Kingsley. That's a movie about hackers where there is a box, literally a little piece of hardware that if you plug in and use, you can access every system. Banks, you can access the airline system. The question was asked in the movie, do you want to crash a plane? Do you want to do a blackout? The movie ends with a huge amount of money being donated to the Democratic Party anonymously. Watching that movie, that's cool, but that can't happen. We're 30 years later, and we are now in a position where all of these things not just can happen, they do happen. We can't live our lives sitting at home. We can't live our lives scared of the possibility of attacks. But there are companies out there, if not all the ones that you buy stock in or all the ones that you follow or all the ones that you use, who are spending billions of dollars. You can Google Bank of America, JP Morgan, $1 billion, not to protect against Shohei Ohtani's interpreter taking $16 million out of his account, though fraud, double authentication, voice authentication, things that may annoy you that you have to do if you want to write a check or do something for $10.69. I'm talking about money spent to prevent, recognize, figure out how to deal with as quickly as possible a cyber attack. The amount of money that's been spent to protect against cyber attacks in industries, it's quintupled at least. In the banking sector, 5 years ago, banks were spending a couple $100 million, unreal. Now $1 billion, going up every year. Thousands of employees whose sole job is to protect against cyber attacks and fraud. What used to be not possible other than in the movies is now a part of our everyday life. And no one thinks about it until it impacts them. But here's the problem. The impact doesn't have to be large. It doesn't have to be enormous where you get a text from Coca that Biden dropped out of the president re-election bid. The impact of cyber attacks or protection against fraud happens in small increments. It's not that someone brings the entire FAA down, including planes. It's not that somehow hundreds of billions of dollars disappear. The cyber attacks that we see happen in increments. And then you look back 5 years, 10 years, and you realize what you're doing today, what is driving your economy, what concerns exist that are baked into a market that people invest in, or that is baked into the price of goods and services that is disguised as inflation. Don't get me wrong, there's actual inflation for many, many different reasons. But increase in costs happen because when companies have to spend more, they have to charge more. Sports teams do it. Payroll goes up, so do your ticket prices. But what we're protecting against is something that could be way more catastrophic than losing the finals, or not winning a Grand Slam tournament, or not winning an Olympic gold medal. The catastrophic end to a large-scale cyber attack is the end of our economy. And I don't want to scare you, overplay this, or under-deliver information. Because if we don't have trust in our banks, if we don't have trust in our airlines and transportation system, if as a country we lose trust in the basic principles, the buttresses of our entire lives, that's when it crumbles. People are worried about civil war as it relates to race. People are worried about guns and all sorts of violence as it relates to inequality, the middle class disappearing. Some people on some side of the aisle blame it on immigration, illegal immigration, whatever the case may be. I got a better thought for you to have, which is, how about the worry that we have over technology and the possible power that exists that would change your life far more than any single thing you're going to hear from any presidential candidate? Anything. The result was that I'm here and not in St. Louis. And my message to those in St. Louis who were excited for tonight, I was more excited than you were. My message to the people in St. Louis, to City Winery, I want to thank them for their flexibility and understanding. We will have more tour dates for Nothing Personal because we love being on the road. Something about St. Louis, it makes me want to come back even more. Let's go to Nothing Personal pick of the day. A couple of things happened over the weekend that certainly deserve some attention by me. One of them is that Patrick Corbin won a game. Bless his soul. We're only 9-4 with Corbin picks. I believe Coca, did the Nats sweep the Reds coming out of the All-Star break? I can't know that for sure, but I have some inkling that the Nats swept the Reds. Although I don't know if they have a wraparound series and they're playing a 4-gamer. But either way, we lost that one. It was a sweep. That is not how you want to come out of the All-Star break. You spend so much time, side note, we didn't cover this, Coker, or talk about this. When you, after the All-Star break, when the team reconvenes, there's always a team meeting and the GM and the president are always there. And you get the players together. And it's not the meeting of panic where, hey, we've lost 12 in a row. It's not the meeting where you're talking about anything else. It's the meeting of, all right, guys, we're starting the post-All-Star break. Let's just get back to it, get back focused, and understand that the sprint to October is now. Let's go. And we start tonight. The Reds were not out of the race the way they are now. They're not sellers the way they should be now. Being swept by the Nats to open your post-All-Star break schedule is not good. And baseball executives do not change their plan based on a sweep like this. But the period between now and July 30th, which is now only 8 days away, it's like a last gasp for front offices. We'd even call it that. It's the last gasp to see what you are. Are we good enough to play in October? Do we add? Do we not? Do we stay the same? Or do we do the cool thing these days, which is both add and subtract? There were multiple teams who struggled coming out of the break. Red Sox, Yankees, Twins and Guardians, not spectacular. The New York Metropolitans, their kryptonite is my Miami Marlins. I love beating the Mets. Always loved it. 18 years, just loved it. Ruining seasons for the Mets. like we did I think it may have been 07, 08. I was watching the Mets lose their series to the Marlins this weekend, thinking to myself, my God, Steve Cohn, does he hate losing to the Marlins the same way that our owner, Jeffrey Loria, hated losing to the Mets? I wonder if there's a mutuality of frustration. Saturday's pick was more interesting to me because for whatever reason, the Astros were underdogs, and we had the Astros beating the Mariners, which they did. The Astros end the weekend in first place in a tie with Seattle, having beaten them 2 out of 3. They went into the All-Star break down a game. They come out of this weekend tied. The Seattle Mariners have every reason to panic. The Seattle Mariners are going to panic. They're going to start designating players soon. They're going to start figuring out that the hitters they have, they've got to try anybody else. They're going to have to try to get a bat because the reality is if you don't win that division, you're behind in the National League wildcard race, which is in the American League wildcard race. 2.5 games, I think, is where Seattle now is out of the playoffs. 1 game behind in the division, and then tied in the division, but still 2.5 out in the wild card. I was thinking about the Astros and how in basketball, when you're down big, you spend so much energy to come back that often you lose that game. The amount of energy that Houston had to spend to catch Seattle, are they going to run out of gas? And baseball doesn't work that way. It's not like a basketball game or even a football game where you fight back from 28-3 and run out of gas and can't possibly win that game. I mean, who would ever think such a thing is possible? Obviously, that's never happened. If you're down that big, you're going to lose eventually. I don't see that with the Astros at all. As a matter of fact, Coca, I'm so sure. Wait to see is when we tell you something's going to happen. If not, no problem. And this could be the quickest one ever. I'm checking right now because we're live on the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. I'm checking to see whether or not it's a wraparound series the way the Mets Marlins is a wraparound series. Nope, the Astros are now in Oakland and the Mariners are hosting the Angels. Interesting. This wait to see is on like Donkey Kong. Book it, Coca. The Houston Astros will not spend another single day in second place for the rest of the season. Wait to see. My pick for tonight is another team that is trying to catch Philadelphia. The Atlanta Braves are favored over those aforementioned Cincinnati Reds who got swept by the Nats. The Braves are pretty heavy favorites at minus 155 over the Reds. The Braves have a small problem. The Braves have placed Ozzie Albies, their second baseman, and Max Fried, their ace, on the injured list. Max Fried has a forearm strain. You know what that means. Ozzie Albies broke his wrist. They say Albies will be out for 2 months. There's no timeline on Fried. Apparently, Fried, before the All-Star game, had some problems getting loose. Felt something again when he reported back on Friday from Arlington, and the MRI revealed a strain. They're calling it neuritis. It's code for panic. The hope is obviously that he can start throwing again because the soreness goes away. You hope for no structural damage. You hope that it's not something that goes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. You add the Fried injury to the Strider injury, Acuna injury, Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies. The Braves have a significant problem. Somehow they continue to win while the Phillies have practically run away with the NL East. The Braves are still in the conversation for getting through October. Hard to imagine. Alex Anthopoulos, the GM of the Braves, has to decide when to say uncle. I remember having conversations with baseball people about this. to acknowledge when it's just not going to be your year, whether you're healthy and just are not performing, or whether you would have performed but for the health, whether there's teams in your division that just are so hot and have been so good for so long who you didn't expect, but there it is. Something like what Minnesota must be thinking about Cleveland at some point here. Alex Anthopoulos and Liberty are not going to give up on this season by any stretch. Alex Anthopoulos is going to try to repeat what he did when the Braves won the World Series and make ads at the margin at the deadline. He is not the type who makes moves like AJ Preller, which are eyewash and all for show that don't add up to anything. Alex Anthopoulos is all about making his team better in ways that fans and media don't need to understand. But at what point does he say, wow, we just cannot catch a break? Braves, 155 over the Reds. They'll catch a win tonight. All right, we come back. We're going to review a Faye Dunaway movie. I told you I'm in a Faye Dunaway state of mind. I reviewed her documentary on Friday, and I watched a Faye Dunaway movie yesterday, and I'm going to watch one today. So you're going to come on a Faye Dunaway journey with me. And then I'm going to answer a question that you had about what's going on in Oakland. Yet another Oakland A's situation that needs some explaining, which I'll be happy to do after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. We're here every day, live 8 a.m., 10 a.m. on the DraftKings Network. Thank you for tuning in. You can find the DraftKings Network in so many places. You can find our show. You can download it, subscribe, listen, watch. I'm always surprised, Coke, at the number of people who only listen to the show, which obviously I'm so appreciative of, but have never actually seen me. And then they see me and they're like, wow, not what I pictured. It's not like it's hard to find a picture of me, but there's a lot of you listening. So thank you. I still watch a movie every day, no matter what the news of the day is, no matter who's being inducted into the Hall of Fame, no matter what games are on, no matter what All-Star game is happening, no matter how cool it is to watch Clark go to Reese, no matter how concerned I am, the fact that the USA men's Olympic team barely beat South Sudan, no matter what's in my mind, I'm going to watch a movie. In 1967, yes, that's before most of us were born. As a matter of fact, there's about 90% of us born after 1967. A movie came out with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway about the Burrow game. 4869. Hi, my name is David Samson. All right, we're good. Clyde Barrow, the Barrow game, and Bonnie Parker, Bonnie and Clyde. They were bank robbers. Not like Billy the Kid, but close enough. They were stars in their time. They loved attention. Now, in today's age, they'd be bank robbers who had amazingly large social media followings, who would be brazen enough that they would walk into a bank and say, hi, I'm robbing your bank. Please follow me on Twitter. This was a revolutionary movie. Gene Hackman's in it. Oscar winner Estelle Parsons for her role as Gene Hackman's wife, Barrow's brother, part of the gang, or was she? Are you thrown when scenes in a car look not real, when you know that there's fake scenery in the background? Does that bother you? Does it bother you to see actresses or actors at their peak, or when they're so very young, and then watch as they age? Do you need special effects? Do you need something in order to make you enjoy because you've gotten to the point where a regular talkie isn't enough for you? Bonnie and Clyde has it all. There's action. There's car chase scenes. Is it Fast and the Furious? No. It makes me furious that you require it to go so fast. The movie is a stroke of brilliance. It's one of those movies, all these lists, 1,001 movies to see before you die. I'll come up with my list of movies to see before you die. Watch Bonnie and Clyde. Revolutionary. Did you see Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame induction yesterday? Helton, Beltre, Leland, Mauer, 3 players, a manager. Florida Marlins World Series winning manager from 1997, who I hope one day is joined before it's too late by the Hall of Fame, not yet in manager Jack McKeon. I love watching the induction ceremonies. I think about the time when Andre Dawson got in and the experience of being there surrounded by greatness. Every year, Hall of Famers are dying, which is quite normal. But these are younger men, not Leland's not old by any stretch, but Mauer, Helton, Beltre, they will be Hall of Famers, I hope, for decades to come, going back to Cooperstown every year. But as I was watching the ceremony and thinking about the ceremony, I was distracted completely, obsessed with the single thought that was in my head that we are now in Ichiro time. All eyes for sure are on the 2025 election. Ichiro is going to be giving a speech in a year welcoming him to the Hall of Fame, and it will mean more to Ichiro than maybe to any player ever before elected into the Hall of Fame. He will go in likely with Billy Wagner, potentially with CC Sabathia, also a first time on the ballot next year. The attention that the Hall of Fame will get from Japan, from the world, to celebrate Ichiro in his career, it is going to be epic, monumental. Ichiro will spend time on his speech, and it will be a speech for the ages, whether it is 1 minute or 20 minutes. We're so lucky. I love that there's a 5-year waiting period after players play before they're eligible to be on the ballot and then get into the Hall of Fame. 5 years is just enough time where your memory is strong, but your longing is even bigger. Where you miss these players and seeing them, no matter that they're more in your life, whether it is their coaching or managing, or whether they're on social media. But when you see highlights and you think back to the memories that you've made with these players, when you have intimate knowledge or respect or understanding of a player, it's the same thing in anything, not just sports. When you have a personal investment in something, that's what brand affinity is about. That's why there's Super Bowl commercials. People want you to love their product, not just to use it, but to feel good about using it. It's such a bizarre thing. We're going to spend money to make sure that what you already bought, you feel great about having bought it. The Hall of Fame is no different. They want you to confirm your love for a player, to watch that player get the ultimate coronation, to listen to what that player has to say, and to feel good that you liked something great. You loved someone spectacular. That's Ichiro. I got to get a countdown clock for Ichiro. Do we have the date yet in January? It's already July, August, September, October, November, December, January. We are 6 months away from finding out whether Ichiro becomes unanimous. I'm going to give you a wait to see, not today, though. We'll have much more to say about the Hall of Fame. The thing that's in my head is, will Ichiro be the first unanimous position player ever? Mariano Rivera was the first player, but now we can say he was the pitcher to be unanimous. No one's ever been unanimous. There will be a position player that will eventually be unanimous on his first ballot. There is no better candidate than Ichiro. Will there be a sourpuss writer who does not put him on the ballot? It is almost impossible to believe that you can fill out a ballot without putting Ichiro's name in. It's got to be an anti-Ichiro statement, or an anti, we would never want a position player to be unanimous, but why not? Not doing the wait to see yet, Coco. All right, play me some music.
You know what I want? I want to talk to Samson.
So you want to talk to Samson? Get in my X at David P. Samson or go on davidsamsonpodcast.com. You can reach out to me there. Ask a question. It may make the show. David, you could say hello or what's shaking or how you doing. David, the A's are terminating their non-baseball employees. You did that when you moved, didn't you? Please explain the decision-making process. Well, thank you very much for that. I will not spend all of your time that we have remaining on a Monday morning telling you why what you said is not exactly correct. But I will talk about what's going on with the A's. The Oakland A's will be playing in Sacramento for the next 3 years, 4 years, maybe forever. We don't know. The employees that were told this past weekend that they will not be retained are employees that it would make no sense for any business to retain, as hurtful as that sounds. When there are people locally who are in Oakland working for your team, when you are moving, whether it's to Sacramento or Vegas or anywhere, there are expenses associated with moving employees to a new location. They're called relocation expenses, where you meet with every employee and you say, we'd like you to come with us to where we're going, and here's what we'll offer you. Here's the package. Moving expenses. A salary commensurate with that market versus this market, though I could argue Sacramento, the cost of living is likely far less than in the Bay Area, but I digress. One of the things that Sacramento has that Oakland currently doesn't have is an infrastructure. There are already employees who are working to sell tickets in Sacramento. There are employees working to secure corporate sponsorships. The president of the A's had a statement that said we've had to make the difficult decision to restructure our workforce due to our relocation to Sacramento next year. This was not an easy decision. I don't agree with him, but that's okay. We want to acknowledge the significant contributions of each employee affected by our staffing adjustments. It's a funny way to describe it. Their dedication and hard work have been invaluable to our organization, and we are grateful for all they've done. That's very nice, but what does it mean? It means that if you are an employee whose job can be done by somebody else at a different location for less money, then you are not going to get the opportunity to move with your company. It's not just the A's, it's any company. When there are plant reductions, when there are output reductions, when there are changes in what a business does. Hey, you're really good at making typewriters. We're making computer chips now. Would you like to be retrained? Nah, okay, we're going to be moving on. There are so many reasons why employees get terminated, so many reasons why we've all been terminated, and they're all legitimate, short of a lawsuit, which proves that there was some sort of illegal activity. When a company is relocating, they're under no obligation, legally or morally, to bring everybody with them. We didn't bring everybody from Montreal to Florida. John Henry didn't bring everyone from Florida to Boston. It is incredibly normal when you can have an economy of scale where you can have one group of people doing the work of what was two groups of people. It's straight up economics. And we can try to blame John Fisher and Dave Cavill. I have spent plenty of time criticizing this entire relocation process. But for this, please. They're even offering a month of severance up to 12 months for those who've been there 12 years or longer. That's a year's pay. Will people get other jobs? Maybe, maybe not. Will they get the same jobs? Maybe, maybe not. Will they get the same paying jobs? Maybe, maybe not. But that was a run for every one of those employees, whether it was 1 year or 25 years. The general counsel one surprised me, though. It's the same state. They're admitted to the state in California. I would think you'd want to bring your lawyers with you, but maybe that's me speaking as a lawyer. When we moved, we brought baseball people from Montreal to Florida, plus a few executives, but the majority of people were left in Montreal. Very expensive to move people from Montreal to Miami. It had to involve visas and green cards, all sorts of complications, to say nothing of language issues. Let's keep our eye on the ball, folks, because the credibility gets lost when there are things that people are doing that really are bad and really are nefarious. If you take everything that someone does, and by definition, because that person did it, who you don't like, who you don't respect, who you don't support politically or economically, if you say that everything that person does is wrong just because they've done it as a knee-jerk reaction, it actually makes you look bad, not the person. Let's criticize people for the things they do that are wrong, not for what we wish were wrong. Speaking of lawyers, everyone have on their bingo card what I had? I want to bring you back to the Copa America final at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, the former pro player, place where I worked for 10 years. We did plenty of shows last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, about how absolutely irresponsible what took place was, how Hard Rock Stadium is ultimately responsible for the security of its people. The finger pointing that's taking place. Well, in a surprise move, lawsuits have been filed. I'm not sure if on a Monday morning at 47 minutes into a 50-minute show, that sarcasm landed. In a surprise move, not. There are people now who were ticket holders for that game who are suing because they were stampeded, they were hurt, they were not allowed access, they were not allowed to enjoy the game because there were people sitting in the aisles next to them, they were not in their assigned seat, whatever the case may be. These lawsuits are being filed, and they're being filed against Hard Rock Stadium. Why? Because that who was supposed to be in charge of security. Complaints that are being filed are saying the unlawful entry of individuals into the arena was a foreseeable consequence of defendants' failure to implement adequate crowd control measures, security protocols, or ticket verification processes. That's fancy legalese for saying, dude, where's my seat and why can't I get there? And by the way, my 10-year-old is crying and my family member is tripping. Literally, figuratively. When you are coming up with a lawsuit, you've got to figure out who you're going to sue, and you're suing people who have money. Here's the funny part. The assets of South Florida Stadium LLC, that is an entity created to run Hard Rock Stadium. Guess what asset is not in there? Any of Steve Ross's real estate. Guess what asset's not in there? The franchise. Guess what's not in there? Cirque du Soleil, F1, tennis. The assets contained inside a stadium LLC, de minimis, teensy-tiny. Good luck trying to get all of Steve Ross's money, NGTH. All right, let's try CONMEBOL. They must have assets. Good luck. What people do who have money, who are opening their doors to the public, is they create different entities. The flowchart of entities that Stephen Ross has for his life would make you nervous. But the purpose is to shelter and protect against lawsuits just like this. Do you think that Stephen Ross is shaking in his shoes, worried that there's going to be a huge payment to be made because of his and his company's ineptness? The cross claims that are going to take place? It's going to be beautiful to behold. The likelihood of any of these lawsuits prevailing, the likelihood of money actually changing hands, that's right. It's the same amount of money that Beckham got. All these different entities are for a reason, and it's just business. Sorry if you missed the game. This is nothing personal.